Tell them to join us. The Maiyegun today. Maiyegun is live. And tonight, we might be digging further into, the background sort of, story of the sponsor or the sponsors of terrorism in Nigeria. You know, majority believes that the sponsor of the terrorism in Nigeria, that they are the roots that should ordinarily be uprooted, destroyed before the proper confrontational, clearing of these terrorists can possibly make any sense, right? However, this is 2025. Sometimes in 2018 and 2019, thereabout, there was this list released all over the country under Buhari as the president of Nigeria. Initially, people agreed that a lot of people were shown a lot of surprises that what is wrong with Nigeria? I mean, how did things get this bad? Is it the corruption or just some people who have managed to sabotage the system? Or is it just those who are the officials who are responsible for preventing all of this, but have become inefficient or incompetent in their own job? So many questions, because a lot of people believe that the Nigeria of old, right, wouldn't get to this stage that Nigerians have now become like a game to these terrorists across the country, kidnapping Nigerians and ripping them of trillions of naira in the name of ransom. And the government appeared so helpless. What is wrong? Well, most of your own supposed suspicion, right? They are true. Because like I said, in 2018, right, a list was made public. In fact, this was part of what got APC, Egbekegbe, elected, wherever in 2015. That was that they needed to expose the sponsor or the sponsors of Boko Haram. Then other kind of terrorists later joined, which now we have 22 different terror groups operating in northern Nigeria alone. So in 2018, names were mentioned, okay, including businesses, who were like mostly bureau de change. The UAE government also released another list of the suspected terrorist sponsor. Nigerians who were living in Dubai, living in UAE, under the cover of God knows what, but they were discovered and their names were made public after it was sent to Nigeria. And remember, when Buhari put together a team or a program where repentant terrorists were allowed to just hold the Quran, okay, and say they won't do it again under their Operation Safe Corridor, where the terrorists captured, right, would eventually be put through a program called rehabilitation and whatever. So they now send these terrorists back into the same communities they destroyed, meeting some of the victims, survivors. And in all of this, it has proven to be a failed policy. So under Buhari, right, in order to pretend that they were also working with the international communities to tracking down or prosecuting the terror sponsors in Nigeria, okay, they initiated what they call the NFIU, all right? And I think that is like the National Financial Investigation, something, your unit, don't mind me, something about financial, okay? So their job was to actually begin to track the activities, financial activities of some certain individuals called, individuals of interest. So when the national security put together a project, all right, to begin to track some individuals. And in the process, they gathered names. People were arrested. Do you get me now? But here is what prevented some of these terror sponsors to escape justice. They had relationship with those in power. For example, they've listed former army generals, right? And I'll kind of break that down for you as well so that you understand the complexity of it. So they've mentioned former military generals as part of the sponsor of terrorism with their names. So they have mentioned Bureau de change operators as those who are also like the sponsors. But for those in power, for example, the number one law officer of the country, Malamu, the guy that sold the fake intel to Kenya to arrange the abduction, the kidnapping of Nnamdi Kanu in 2021, was the same guy that's now being fingered as those that had relationship with the people of interest, including the ones they arrested, questioned, only to be ordered to be freed. And the guy that was the head of the investigation or part of the investigation, his name is also a retired General Ali Kefi. Now, as you can possibly maybe, understand how their things work, we all know that the reason why the terrorism in Nigeria seems to be a lost battle, like Nigeria is so powerless, it's not because the terrorists are so organized or they are so sophisticated and the rest of that. No. There is an internal saboteurs whose reasons of shielding those who were suspected to be terror sponsors, rather than to put them through proper judicial kind of share you get. And if they are found wanting, and these are not suspects like that, they have found them with link to terrorism. But how did they get out? Those who knew Emefiole has been mentioned. Those who knew Malami. Malami is the number one law officer, the guy who was supposed to put together a team to prosecute, including if they have to enact a law by developing a bill, a special law to prosecute terror sponsors and terrorists and all that, right? So Malamu decided to use that resources elsewhere. Here you get now, rather than where it was needed, where they had pure evidence of this terrorist. That's his own indictment. And tonight, like we normally do on Maiyegun's Diary Politico, it is going to be like a storytelling. But I think you're going to like it because I am going to be picking from what this person said. All right. And also this evening, Sahara reporter also shared an exclusive details of 23 individuals who have been confirmed. Before this information is made public, right? You should know that it is not because they were not existing. It is simply because there were some powerful people who have used their own position to bury investigation, bury prosecution, that even these individuals, if they have nothing to do with terrorism, they will be suing Nigerian government and security agencies and all of that, but they never did. But there are evidences of their arrest, interrogation, and the evidences of what went on behind the scene. That first, this man, his name is Ali Kefi, all right? Now, we're going to use what he said though. Shall you hear me now? So Ali Kefi, a retired general, was appointed as NFIU. Let me take it on like as it is reported, okay? So take a look at it as like, according to him, okay, he said terror suspects, so alleged financiers were linked to powerful Nigerians, including ex-Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, the former army chiefs, and others, the Emefiole and others, all right? So from his own reports, I'm going to read the NFIU's stuff. Okay, so he said, a groundbreaking counter-terrorism operation personally approved by former President Muhammadu Buhari resurfaced, which is in the controversy of how many of his own appointed ministers and other office holders used their position to shield some of the suspected terror sponsors in Nigeria from any prosecution. And this man on your screen ended up being arrested, okay, for insubordination violation of this. At first, right, Ali Kefi said it was handpicked in 2021 to lead the Operation Service-Wide, OSW, okay, and a multi-agency investigative task force mandated to identify Boko Haram's masterminds, expose their financial backers, and dismantle the networks enabling the insurgency. But according to him, he said the operation unearthed far more than expected. It exposed sprawling network of financiers allegedly tied to senior government officials, influential military officers, and top financial institutions. Normally, you would expect EFCC, NFIUs like this one, right? And every other security agency that is specialized in anti-terrorism, counter-terrorism, to know that if you don't follow the money, you get me now, if you don't follow the money, you are wasting your time. You're also wasting the lives of your own soldiers. Okay. So from what from what I gathered somewhere, I'll tell you that soon, right? So according, they said the NFI's secret briefings to Buhari. So the turning point. So what did they find? According to Ali Kefi, again, the man on your screen. Okay. So Ali Kefi said, oh, hang on. I just missed something there. Sorry, pardon me, okay. He said the information obtained this time by a Sahara reporter from the OSW's workings, okay. They said, working with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Units, so arrested several high-profile suspects in March 2021. The arrests were based on detailed financial intelligence that tracked flows of money linked to terrorism financing. Now, these findings were formally presented to the President, Buhari, in September 2021, officially, under the auspices of the NFIU. And according to Ali Kefi, he said former Chief of Army Staff, that was Farouk Yahya, featured prominently in the briefing, though information later linked him to one of the arrested suspects. So you see, this person was the former Chief of Army Staff. His name is General Farouk Yahya. So it was mentioned in that their own investigation, and he had a link with Tukur Mamu. Tukur Mamu is a guy that is currently standing trial for, terrorism financing charges. That's the only person. But it wasn't the only person covered by the NFIU. You understand? There were more. But you see, this general, right, is one of those believed to be using his own link to cover some of these activities, because people have said it before, that illegal mining in Nigeria is mostly being perpetrated by the former military generals, some state governors, former state governors, and other people that you can never believe. And they are still there in the public, right? So let's go back to it. Ali Kefi said the very next month, he was suddenly summoned to the headquarters of military police. So on October 18th, 2021, he presented himself only to be detained for several hours after extensive interrogation. Now, the hunter suddenly became haunted because his investigation led him to the highest person in the military then, Chief of Army Staff, the person in charge of the army recruitment and the rest of that. How did you arrive at that? They knew you would find out Now that they have the report, it will be the time to bury it. That's how they operate, by the way. Okay. However, Alikefi said it was, held for hours. So it was then held for 64 days, never charged, never queried, and never tried by any military or civil court before being compulsorily retired. Sounds familiar. Somebody put the stunt there, but that wasn't the whole thing, right? So Kefi, in his own revelation, right, said, in quote, he said, till today, I don't know my offense, you know? And he said his arrest was a coordinated attempt to halt the terrorism financing probe. So meaning somebody high in government buried that probe that could have saved thousands of lives. Tinubu and his gang are currently playing the similar card right now by saying they cannot prosecute the terror sponsors in public. Are you joking? Are you kidding? That is where this high-flying influence will come in, and they will bury it again while lives lives continue to be lost. So Kefi further said, this particular alleged powerful individuals who have links to these suspects. Let me put Kefi back on the screen. You see this one? His name is Buratai the Butcher. He's also a former chief of army staff. You are going to hear his own part. This was Malamu and Buhari. And for those who remember the role of Malamu during Buhari's time, at a point, people said he was the de facto president of Nigeria. He was considered the head of Buhari's cabal. He was that powerful, by the way. And today, he is currently being investigated for corruption, looting the returned loot in Nigeria. Similarly, this man on the screen is also fingered. His name is Godless Emefiole. He is a former central bank governor of Nigeria, and he is currently standing trial for corruption of God knows how many amounts. And all of this, right, at the end, with the way the whole thing is playing out, with what this man has said or shared so far, okay, powerful individuals. So Ali Kefi insists that his comments are not based on anonymous sources, but on what he was personally told by the then director and CEO of the NFIU at the time, Modibo Ahmad Tukur Rebadu, who worked directly with OSW. And according to him, two suspects arrested by OSW were linked to former Chief of Army Staff, Tukur Buratai. I remember Tukur Buratai was the one who came to tell us who came to tell us that the army never recruited soldiers, that the soldiers were recruited by states, and therefore army cannot be accused of recruiting terrorists. Also, for your information, Tukur Buratai, or simply Buratai the Butcher, he was also the guy that set up the is a cow section, the military herdsmen, whereby a section of Nigeria military was set aside to provide national security for Fulani herdsmen across Nigeria. And the purpose, according to him then, was to protect the Fulani herdsmen who have suffered or suffering cattle rustling, from those who always kill the Fulani herdsmen and steal their cows. But that, around the time, was like, a bad idea in the sense that there were armed Boko Haram terrorists, ISWAP, who initially were said to have accused the Fulani terrorists, that means the Fulanis or Fulani herdsmen, of being informants for the Nigerian military. And therefore, they chased them out of Sambisa, and the Fulani and their herdsmen with their AK-47, they started advancing to the Middle Belt and to the south. So it would have been very much sensible for Buratai the Butcher to have used that his much influence at the time to actually crush the armed jihadists, the ISWAP and the Boko Haram at the time, but he didn't in that sense. Okay, but he did try to provide a special security, military protection for the Fulani